Hey guys, my name is Jon. I'm the pastor of Crossway Church in South Florida, and here's my one piece of advice. It is okay if you and your church never become the next big thing. Let me explain. Years ago, before we planted our church, my wife and I attended the Catalyst Conference in Georgia. Now, this was before we had started planting. This is the dreaming stage for us. We knew God had called us to do it, but we weren't quite sure when and where and what all that looked like. But I'll never forget one particular message. It was by Rob Bell before he had all this heretical stuff and controversy. At this point, he was an evangelical darling, and everyone was excited to hear from him. And he gets on the stage, and he tells this story of how he started Mars Hill. And there were a few parts of the story that have always stuck with me. One, he says on the first Sunday, he had 1,000 people show up. And then as he tells the story, he has this little aside. He goes, we had 1,000 people show up and we didn't even do any marketing at all. And the next thing he said was that early on, I can't remember if it was the first series or early on, he decided to teach through the book of Leviticus. So you can imagine, not the easiest book to teach through. He teaches through the book of Leviticus, and as he tells the story, more people show up. Thousands of people keep coming to hear him teach through the book of Leviticus. And then, I'll never forget, he said someone decided after seeing all that God was doing that he was going to give them a building, and he gave them a mall, like a literal mall for their church building. And I remember sitting there with Melissa by me and hearing this inspirational story. And I remember thinking, that is going to be me. And that is going to be our church. We're going to have that same story. We're going to blow up and we're going to have people give us a mall. And we're going to have thousands of people as I preach through the book of Leviticus. I'm like, we're going to be the next big thing. I'm going to be the next big thing. I'll write a book and go on tour and be on a stage. I mean, like all these thoughts flowing through my mind. Well, a couple years later, we did plant a church, and we didn't have 1,000 people on the first Sunday. And I have done a lot of sermon series, never taught through the book of Leviticus, and I've never had someone give us a mall. Although if anyone's interested, we're happy to receive that. God has been faithful to Crossway over the last 13 years. We've seen growth, we've seen health, we've seen strength, we've seen people come to faith in Jesus. But you know what's true? We never became the next big thing. And I never became the next big thing in South Florida. And early on, and maybe even throughout the years, and probably still something that I work through, is there's this wrestling match of, but why not? Why not me, God? And you almost compare yourself with someone else. Why couldn't we have done that? You know, have I not been faithful? You know, what's going on? And I really sensed the Lord say throughout the years, hey, Jon, here's the deal. It's okay if you and your church never become the next big thing. Because here's the reality. What God is asking of you, and he's asking of me, is not to be someone else, but simply to be faithful with what he has entrusted to us. And so here's what I want to say to you. Whatever the Lord has entrusted to you, if he's entrusted 20 or 50 or 500 or 5,000, here's what he's asking. Not to try to become the next big thing, but to simply be today faithful with what he's entrusted. And here's what I know. If you are faithful with what God has placed in your hands, at the end of the day, you'll stand before him and he's going to say this to you. He's going to say, well done, good and faithful servant. He's not going to compare. He's going to say that based on what you've done with what he has entrusted to you. So today, it's okay if you and your church never become the next big thing. Just be faithful.